The special thing about the MC of this story is that no matter how many times he dies, he is always reborn again. It's happened so many times that it's not funny anymore. And each time he is reborn in a different world and time, from the most primitive civilizations to those who conquered outer space. This time, our hero's carelessness cost him his life in a battle against a monster, and he was reborn as a baby again. But he's a pro at reincarnation for a reason. Let's see what he comes up with this time. In this current life he's got, he begins to scan his surroundings, and by the looks of the furniture and room decor, he's sure this must be somewhere in the Middle Ages. With the expertise he's built from his past lives, he can tell this isn't Earth, which makes him wonder if he's in a fantasy setting this time. Personally though, he's found the sci-fi worlds to be more comfortable. They were clean, high-tech, and had other perks. But after taking in his current surroundings, he's at least glad he's not born into a poor family. They've even got maids, which leads him to believe this must be a humble upper-class family in a fantasy world. But more than anything, he's pretty glad that this hot chick is his mother, and he's enjoying every kiss from her to the fullest. Though the language she's speaking is unfamiliar, there's something he can understand without knowing the words. The feeling of her holding him so tightly, out of fear of dropping him. And the warmth in her eyes tells him that he's gotten a loving mother in this life, which is a blessing in itself. You see, through his countless lives, he's met and gotten to know all kinds of mothers, but motherly love wasn't always given. Sadly, he's even been abandoned right after birth. And there was also a time he was exploited as child labor. But this time around, he has a good feeling that this life won't be as hard as many of the ones he's lived. That's when a maid comes in and insists on holding the prince as the lady might be exhausted. The mention of prince catches our boy off guard. He wasn't expecting to be reincarnated as royalty this time. Still, he can't quite figure out why his mother does not look so happy. He gets his answer soon enough when his mother reminds the maid that people might not consider this child a prince. Apparently, this lady, Rifana, had a humble background. She used to be a maid, just like the one before her, named Chenna. She tells Chenna to simply call her by her name, saying there's no need for formalities since no one else is around. Rifana believes the only reason they call this child a prince is because the king's blood flows in his veins. However, the truth is far from honorable. This child also carries the blood of someone of lowly status. She already knows that the nobles and royal concubines have rejected her son, claiming he has no right to succession or power because of her humble origins. Seeing his mother drowning in sorrow, the kid quickly tries to wipe away her tears, which genuinely makes her happy. She thinks it's heartwarming that her baby is trying to comfort her. The maid, though, dismisses it as the actions of an infant simply fidgeting. By the way, our boy goes by the name Arel in this life, and we know for a fact he was indeed trying to console his mother. He personally doesn't care about having no right to succession or loyal followers. In fact, he's glad about it. Being overshadowed means the powerful aristocrats won't give him a second glance, making him practically invisible to the rest of the royal family. This suits him perfectly. He's ready to live the life of a carefree prince with nothing to worry about, and his gut feeling tells him that this 101st life is going to be amazing. The main guy is feeling pretty good about himself because he's got both royal and commoner blood. To him, it's like hitting the jackpot since he just wants a simple life away from all the rich dudes' drama. Lady Rifana and Chenna are keeping an eye on him. Rifana looks at him, thinks he seems so happy, and wishes she could keep him that way. But she knows she can't. When Arel hears the word power, he wakes up from his dream and starts sucking his thumb. Arel starts thinking about his situation. In a world where everything is about family and rank, being a prince who can't inherit anything feels like being a pawn with no throne to fight for. He realizes he has no power, no backup, and no future. He figures people will just use him until they get rid of him. But then, he reminds himself that his mom doesn't need to worry because he's confident he can handle things, especially since he was a pro in his past lives. 3 months go by, and Lady Rifana looks at baby Arel while he's sleeping. She thinks he looks like a little angel. She strokes his hair and wishes it felt like the king's. Just then, Chenna tells her the carriage is ready. Rifana quickly kisses Arel's cheek and tells him to be good before she leaves. As the door shuts behind her, we see Arel wasn't really asleep. He was faking it. He laughs but quickly covers his mouth so Chenna doesn't come running in to check. Arel thinks it's tough work being this charming, especially as a baby with everyone watching him. He then sits up, ready to do something no baby should be able to do. Power up. He knows time is short, and he needs power to make his life easier. In every world he knows one thing is always true. Strength is everything. If he's strong, nobody will mess with him. While cultivating, Arel starts thinking about all his past lives and how he didn't waste them. One of his biggest wins was creating a method that lets him train even as a baby. The origin creation Qigong technique. It's something his 30th reincarnation invented, and it's a total game changer. This method lets Arel work on both his natural chi and origin chi at the same time. The best part? Nobody can even tell he's training. Arel does some quick math and figures out he'll have 60 years worth of inner chi by the time he's 10 and 180 by 20 if he keeps this up. Once he gets past the early stages, he won't even need to focus so hard. He could train while chilling in Chaina's arms if he wanted. To speed things up, Arel uses his energy to stimulate his nerves, moving all the chi to his brain and frontal lobe. The heat from this process spreads through his body, making him sweat like crazy and feel sharp, unbearable pain. As the energy builds up, Arel feels like he's about to lose control. He screams but quickly stops himself. Chaina hears the noise and rushes into his room. But when she looks at him, Arel is lying still in his crib, pretending to sleep. She wonders if he needs a diaper change and leans in to sniff. Arel panics inside, knowing any touch from her might ruin all his hard work. But to his relief, Chaina smells nothing and mutters something about him having a bad dream before walking out. Once she's gone, Arel's body is like a mini furnace with his energy leaking out everywhere. He struggles to keep it together, feeling like his body might not survive the strain. Nonetheless, he pushes through the pain, determined not to let anything or anyone control his life, even if it means risking everything. Arel is set on using the origin creation Qigong technique to become powerful enough to live comfortably and on his own terms. Just as he steadies himself, another scream escapes him, loud enough for Chaina to hear outside his door. Chaina suddenly rushes into the room, thinking something terrible has happened. She finds Arel sweating buckets but still lying there, looking like he's peacefully sleeping. Deciding he might need some extra care, she runs off to prepare a bath with herbs. The moment she's gone, Arel jumps to his feet, happy because everything he's been working on is finally paying off. When Chaina returns, she carries him in her arms and says good things to him for being such a strong little guy. Arel just smiles, feeling lucky she hasn't noticed anything unusual. Thanks to his mana concentration technique, his body is constantly absorbing energy even when he's just eating or sleeping. He feels thrilled knowing that in just 3 years, he'll be stronger than most adults. By the time he's 10, his power will be unmatched, and the thought makes him really happy. As Chaina holds him, she hears a strange noise from above, but gets distracted by Arel's cheerful expression. Meanwhile, Arel is already imagining the life ahead of him, powerful, respected, and living like a king. He can't wait for that future to arrive. It's been only 5 months since Arel was born, but thanks to his mana absorption technique, his physical strength and inner energy are leagues ahead of any baby his age. Crawling on the floor, he doesn't stop pushing himself, knowing he's on track to surpass everyone soon. Just as he's focused on his training, Lady Rifana walks in and carries him up off the carpet. She brings him a toy he wasn't expecting, and for a moment, his eyes are glued to it. Seeing her disappointment when he hesitates, Arel quickly starts playing with the toy, pretending to have a blast. Inside, though, he feels secondhand embarrassment for very obvious reasons. Still, Lady Rifana and Chaina laugh at how happy he looks, talking about how handsome and perfect he is. Arel secretly loves the praise but knows it's mostly thanks to his mother's good looks. Even so, he decides to embrace these moments of being the fun baby, knowing this time won't last forever. The baby protagonist suddenly shows them that he isn't happy, and Chaina can't figure out what he wants at first, but all he really wants is food. He starts to cry as he tries to make it obvious. Finally, Chaina guesses right and gives him some milk. While he is busy drinking, the adults start talking about money. They talk about how the funds for the house are running low since yesterday. Even though Arel needs proper food as a prince, there just isn't enough money. The mansion's budget has been cut hard this year, and even raising one child is becoming a struggle. This is quite odd for a royal family. Arel overheard the maids talk about this before. They say his mother, Lady Rifana, will have to eat less to save money for everyone else. If she doesn't, nobody will make it through the season. Arel can't believe it and thinks it has to be a joke. But his mother stays positive, saying it doesn't matter if she doesn't survive as long as others can. Hearing this makes Arel upset. How can they treat his mother like this? She isn't powerful or important in the eyes of the nobles, but she's still his mom. Even though she gave birth to a prince, neither of them have any real status or protection. He starts to understand why she is always going out in the carriage. She's been trying to meet the king, but it seems like she keeps failing. Arel thinks it's cruel. Even if the king doesn't care about her, she is still the mother of his child. How can he let others treat her so badly? He starts crying again because of this, and Chaina hands him over to Lady Rifana, and he calms down in her arms. Even as a baby, Arel wants to help his mom. He knows he can't do much, but he has to come up with something. Winter is coming, and things will only get worse with the cost of heating. In his baby bed, he puts his boss baby brains to work, and starts thinking hard about what he can do to help. Then suddenly he gets an idea. As Arel stares at the charcoal in the fireplace, he suddenly remembers that charcoals are made out of carbon, and jewels like diamonds are made of carbon as well, and his brilliant mind sees a way to solve their money problem. If he can turn charcoal into a diamond, he could change everything. Even though he's dying to jump out of the crib and get started, he knows his tiny baby body isn't strong enough yet. Instead, he decides to use his mana to float himself out safely. Nobody else knows that charcoal could be this useful. But to Arel, it's like finding treasure. So he immediately pushes away his self-praise and gets to work while the rest of the house is asleep. Arel focuses his mana, combining it with heat to put pressure on the charcoal. He pours every ounce of energy into compressing it, repeating enchanting spells to keep himself going. The process is tough, and the pressure pushes Arel back, but he stays focused, refusing to give up. He keeps thinking about his mother's happiness when she sees what he's made. Just as he thinks about her, a sudden burst of energy causes soot to explode out of the chimney. Arel moves over to the fireplace, digging through the mess until he finally finds it, a sparkling diamond he created with his own power. The diamond's beauty leaves him speechless. Now, he just needs to figure out how to give it to his mother without making her suspicious. Feeling satisfied, he rests until morning. When Chaina greets him the next day, she's shocked to find Arel walking around outside his crib, covered in ash and soot. She picks him up, confused about how he managed to escape. She assumes he must have been playing all night. But the mess in the room makes her pause. The floor, the fireplace, and the carpet are all filthy. And Chaina wonders if the house has always been this chaotic, or if something strange happened during the night. She tells our boy not to touch the floor, but he doesn't seem to care. He quickly comes up with a plan and puts the jewel in his mouth. Chaina notices something strange in his mouth and asks him to spit it out. She pinches his cheeks, and a diamond falls out. She gets very surprised and asks where he got it and if it was from the floor. Chaina, who looks after the palace treasury, says nothing is missing and that the diamond isn't even listed. So she hugs Arel, saying it seems like he wanted to give it to her. Arel smiles and agrees, with a feeling that his mom would probably like it too. Later, wagons pull up at the palace, filling up the empty kitchen storage with food and firewood. Thanks to the diamond, they now have 5 years' worth of supplies. Lady Rifana worries about who the diamond might belong to, but Chaina assures her that it's fine since the castle was abandoned for nearly 100 years before Lady Rifana took over. She also adds that it could be a blessing meant for Prince Arel. Lady Rifana isn't sure, but she sure feels thankful for the resources. Arel holds onto his mom's dress, thinking she just needs to hang in there until he grows up. He dreams of a future where she doesn't have to struggle anymore. As he clings to her, she promises to make sure the king knows he has a son named Arel. That winter, the fireplace keeps burning, and the palace's finances finally get back on track. The changes are obvious around the palace. One day, while Lady Rifana is eating, she notices the meal is way too much for her and asks about the servants. Chaina assures her everything is fine since Anna, who had quit, is back, and the servants are being treated better now. But what stands out the most to Prince Arel is how his mom isn't looking sad anymore. As he watches her, he thinks she looks prettiest when she smiles. Even though it's the coldest winter ever, it feels warmer to him because things are stable, and his mom is happy. A year passes, and Chaina and Lady Rifana are busy deciding what Prince Arel should wear. They make him try on a bunch of outfits before picking a fancy one. Arel can't figure out why they're making such a big deal about his clothes. Feeling tired, he lies down on the floor and starts whining, surprising both his mom and Chaina. Chaina quickly figures out he needs to rest and tucks him into his crib. Then she says that Prince Arel is going to be officially recognized as part of the royal family. Arel, confused, wonders what she means by recognized. Lady Rifana is happy Arel has grown up without any issues and wonders if the king will show up for his birthday. Chaina reassures her, saying the king is just waiting for the right time since bad things often happen to newborns. Arel overhears them talking and realizes all this fuss is for his birthday. Lady Rifana says not everyone might like the banquet, but it's the perfect chance to officially announce that Arel has royal blood. She's glad the Ernesia royal family rules apply to him too. Arel notices how excited his mom seems and figures it's because of the banquet. Then it hits him. If there's a banquet, the nobles and other royals will be there, and he might finally get to meet the king. The banquet for Prince Arel kicks off that night with a grand feast and an over-the-top party that clearly cost quite more than a fortune. Prince Arel is kinda thrilled to see the lavish decorations, the food, and the fancy outfits the kingdom homie's wearing. Everything feels like a dream to him. Lady Rifana picks him up and asks if he's amazed. Arel thinks this whole thing is definitely a new experience. Chaina points out that it's probably the first time he's seen so many people in one place, and Lady Rifana reminds him that he's the star tonight, giving him a kiss on the cheek. Arel catches the judgmental stares from the nobles and overhears their whispers about him and his mother, but he doesn't let it bother him. His focus is on one thing, meeting his father, King Terrell of Ernesia. Arel burns with frustration, thinking about how the king has never cared about their lives. He decides this banquet is the perfect chance to make sure the king notices him. The atmosphere changes as the royal family of Ernesia walk in, officially starting the banquet. Arel figures this must be the queen and her family. He can feel their strong presence as they approach. His eyes lock onto the queen, her children, his half-siblings, and the eldest son, who stands out the most. There's also a girl acting dramatic, like she's in her own fantasy world. Arel mentally notes that he needs to learn more about each of them, but they walk right past and completely ignore his mother. Lady Rafana notices the commotion might be overwhelming for Arel and tries to comfort him. Even though Arel knows she's probably struggling herself, she still manages to make him laugh, easing the tension. Meanwhile, the crowd is fixated on the queen, admiring her beauty. Arel notices a sudden change in his mother's expression. It had been calm, but now something has unsettled her. He looks around and sees why. The king, his majesty, finally enters, radiating an intimidating energy that makes Arel freeze for a moment. He can't tell if his father is looking at him or his mom. He thinks it's unlucky that being reborn doesn't come with the ability to read minds. Imagine how great it'd be if he could figure out what everyone else is thinking. After a while, people start giving him gifts and congratulating him, acting like it's such a big deal to see him. But when it's the imperial family's turn, their attitude toward him and his mom is clear. They don't hide their real feelings, and their behavior hits him hard. He wants to jump out of his mom's arms and properly go after that woman. How dare she treat him and his mom like they don't even matter? She clearly doesn't see them as people. Looking around, he realizes everyone here is just as fake and rotten. For a moment, he thinks about shouting and calling them all out. But he doesn't want to make his mom feel embarrassed. He decides to play along and act nice because that's what people expect. Hypocrisy is normal here, unfortunately. All he wants is to leave before he falls asleep in his mom's arms. Just as he's about to drift off, he notices a young girl nearby. She's probably one of the king's concubine's daughters. She seems too young for all this drama, but her presence stands out. Thankfully, some of the mistresses have already left. When the banquet finally ends, he and his mom sigh in relief at the same time. But the night isn't over yet. The queen herself approaches them. She makes it clear that getting near them isn't hard, thanks to her son, the heir to the throne, who is always close by. Arel can't tell if she's bragging about her son or just trying to rub it in. Either way, it's exactly the kind of thing he expects from her. The queen goes on to say how sweet Arel is and how much he resembles his mom, but Arel isn't buying it. He's sure she has something to do with their struggles. After all, someone has to be behind the drastic cuts to their castle's finances. The knights had been turned into lumberjacks just to gather firewood, and Arel's clothes look like they've been pieced together from scraps by the servants. Meanwhile, the queen wishes him a long life and other formal niceties, but as she leaves, she smirks, leaving a sour impression. Then something unexpected happens. Lady Rafana spots the king himself. He asks if she is getting used to the castle, and she gives a polite but not entirely truthful answer, which doesn't surprise Arel. All he wants is for the king to give them the support they need and act like a proper father. Arel starts crying loudly, which makes the king take notice and ask to hold him. It's the first time the king has seen Arel in a year. As he holds him, the king seems kind of confused. Most of his kids cry nonstop when they see him, but Arel just smiles. Arel thinks it would be funny if his charming baby smile could leave the king stunned. The king seems to start liking him a little bit, amused that Arel isn't scared of him. He even says something about raising him in the future. But Arel isn't interested in staying still. He makes gestures, signaling for the king to put him down. The king assumes Arel wants to walk, but Lady Rafana quickly says he can't walk yet since he's only a year old. At that moment, though, Arel decides it's time to prove everyone wrong. He takes his first steps right then and there. Knowing he's the star of the evening and needing to show off, the room erupts in excitement as everyone cheers for little Arel's first steps. Even the king seems impressed, realizing Arel is trying to show him something important, that he isn't like other kids. Arel feels confident that this is just the start of proving himself, but as he reaches the table and tries to steady himself on it, he performs an epic fail. The whole table, along with all the food and drinks, comes crashing down. As the plates and glasses come crashing down onto Arel, everyone is freaked out, even the king. But Arel, this was all part of his grand little scheme, not just to show off that a 1-year-old could walk, but to pull off his perfectly executed dramatic act. He lies on the ground crying like he's in the middle of an epic tragedy, and the king picks him up, checking for injuries. The king sees that Arel's clothes are soaked in wine but finds no real harm. He decides Arel needs a change of clothes. Chaina steps in to help, but the king waves her off, wanting to handle it himself. What he discovers next leaves him speechless. Underneath Arel's stained clothes are undergarments that look more like scraps than anything worthy of a prince. Chaina looks confused, claiming she had dressed Arel in fresh clothes earlier that morning. As the king inspects the fit, he realizes how shabby and pitiful Arel's life must be, and the crowd starts murmuring, saying stuff about it being disgraceful and all. Frustrated by the whispers, the king demands silence, with his voice blasting through the hall and sending shivers down everyone's spines. He looks at Arel's mother, clearly processing how poorly they've been living. Meanwhile, Arel is feeling quite relieved. His plan worked perfectly. His clothes might have been ruined, but they had told the story he wanted. In reality, Arel had been busy that morning. While Chaina was getting him dressed, he used all his tiny strength to stretch and tear at the cloth, making it look as raggedy as possible. It wasn't hard, and with a little magic, he gave his outfit the extra touch of poverty he needed to make his statement. If he were older and stronger, he wouldn't have needed to rely on magic, but it worked anyway. The king finally asks Lady Rifana to explain how things got this bad. How could they fail so much at maintaining their status? But seeing how distressed she is, he doesn't press her for answers. Instead, he turns to one of his officials and asks how funds are distributed for the concubines' castles. The king is disappointed because, as far as he remembers, he'd given clear orders for the budget to be shared equally. Everything was supposed to be running smoothly. So why, at this event of all places, does it look like they've been forgotten? The king can't understand what's going on. He demands the report immediately, wasting no time. Watching all of this, Arel realizes his father is serious about figuring things out, and he's eager to see the numbers in that report. Lady Rifana, Arel's mother, wants to smooth things over, claiming it must be some mistake, and asks for her son back. But Arel knows this is their one big chance. While everyone panics, and the king's secretary pulls up to deliver the documents, the entire room holds its breath, knowing things are about to get heated. When the king looks at the report, he's quite stunned. He can't believe what his eyes are seeing, so he uses his power to set the papers ablaze right there, which shocks Arel. Arel hadn't imagined his father could be so clueless about what's been going on. The truth is, it's obviously all the queen's doing. The king calls to his queen, demanding to know if she was aware of the situation. The queen tries to play it cool, pretending to be just as shocked as everyone else. But the king ain't having it. His intimidating presence grows as he reminds her that managing the budget is entirely her responsibility. Seeing what's up, the eldest son decides to use his perfect timing to pull up and defend his mama. He isn't about to let his mother face this alone and wants to share his own opinion right then and there. The prince tries to explain that this is some big old mix-up, because he's sure his mom wouldn't do something like this. But the king gets even angrier, saying it doesn't matter because a leader is always responsible for their team's mistakes. And thanks to her carelessness, his little brother ended up hungry and without clothes. The older son looks at our hero with these super guilty eyes, which just makes the situation even more awkward. It's clear he's nothing like his dad, who's strong and commanding, or his mom, who's smart and sneaky. The king turns to the eldest son and asks if he's seriously saying his mom had nothing to do with this. Then, without waiting for an answer, he tells his queen how disappointed he is in her. Lady Rifana, trying to defend the queen, keeps saying it's not her fault, instead it's hers, and that she messed up. The king, totally confused now, wonders what she's even talking about. He tells her that just being the mother of his kid should be enough to prove her place in the family. She looks a little embarrassed, and the king gently touches her hand, reminding her to know her role and act accordingly. This whole scene really ticks off the queen and her son, and the king demands that they find out who's to blame and make sure this never happens again. The queen, clearly shaken, looks down at the floor and promises to handle it and make sure it won't happen again. The king gives her one final warning: mess up again, and she'll face punishment. The queen keeps apologizing, saying she'll find the guilty party and make them pay, but she still doesn't seem to get why he's this mad. She then insists she has no idea how this happened, not knowing how to explain herself to Lady Rifana, who is also really stressed out. But the hero sees right through the queen. While his mom tries to say there's no mistake and defends the queen, our protagonist can't figure out why his mom is protecting the one person who probably knows every little detail about what went down. The queen promises this won't happen again, but only our hero realizes that at least she could pretend to look guilty. Instead, she just scares everyone with her power. With that, the hero's birthday ends, and somehow the financial mess is fixed. Later on, it's announced that the queen didn't even have a hand in sorting it out. The culprit is quickly found, a family of low-ranking nobles. They're blamed for everything and without much fuss, executed on the spot with a guillotine. The palace servants gossip about how the aristocrats even confessed to the crime, but no one can figure out where they'd spend such a massive amount of money. Everyone seems relieved the issue is resolved, except for our baby boy. He can tell the real mastermind has gotten away scot-free. The case is closed, but to the hero, it's totally unfair. He makes up his mind, when he grows up he'll teach everyone a lesson. But for now, being a baby with a small body means his main focus is food, so his only response is to cry. Soon he's being spoon-fed and feels pretty happy with his current situation. Still, he knows he needs to work on his body since he's going to be stuck as a baby for a while. But after thinking it over, he realizes all he really has to do is eat and play. Once his belly is full, he decides it's nap time. Sometime later, he wakes up to the sound of a carriage pulling up to the house. He flies to the window to check it out while his babysitter snoozes. He sees a group of people step out, and soon after, 3 of them enter his room: his mom, an adult, and a child. The hero suddenly remembers the babysitter. If she wakes up, his powers will be exposed, so he flies back to her and starts pinching her cheeks to wake her up. The adults immediately walk in just in time to see this, and his mom immediately yells at him to stop tormenting the poor nanny. The nanny notices another mistress has arrived and greets her right away. Our hero spots the newcomer too. The newly arrived mistress quickly says there's no need to apologize because she didn't warn anyone about her visit. Our hero realizes this is Phenelia, another concubine. Everyone starts saying how they would have welcomed her properly if they knew she was coming. But Phenelia says she needs to talk to our hero's mother alone. Our hero's mother can't figure out why Phenelia wants to see her, but assumes it must be serious. While waiting for the serious talk, she ends up choking on her tea. Phenelia, looking genuinely regretful, apologizes for her behavior at Prince Arel's birthday banquet. She explains her family once played a big role in winning battles on the continent and were well known, but those glory days are over. Now, they're struggling because no sons have been born in the family lately, and their reputation has faded. On top of that, rumors say they've been low on money for years. Our hero's mother asks if Phenelia is here because of her family's problems. Phenelia admits they're deeply in debt. She also recalls being pressured by the queen, which probably added to their financial mess. Phenelia pulls out a bag of money, admitting it's not enough to fix things, but says she feels really bad about everything. She admits our hero's mother probably hates her and her family. Just then, the door opens, and Phenelia's daughter quietly appears in the room. It becomes clear Phenelia only wants to shield her child from getting tangled up in conflicts with the imperial family. The mistress calmly says she's fine and doesn't need anything, insisting that Phenelia isn't at fault for any of this. Phenelia asks her not to pity her, but the mistress says she doesn't feel pity, she's just being straightforward. She points out that there's no reason for them to turn against each other now. The mistress makes it clear she understands the situation and doesn't hold any grudges against Phenelia's family. She gives the bag of money back, saying that it would be better spent on something nice for Phenelia's little daughter. She says she understands why Phenelia's family has been trying to manage their palace expenses. Then, she casually brings up some shocking news. She believes the reason behind all of this is that she serves her queen. This revelation leaves our boy stunned, and suddenly it all makes sense to him on why his mother is so disliked by others. He starts walking around his room, thinking about how hard his mother's life must be. Chena notices he's upset and doesn't know how to calm him down. She asks if he's okay, and he quickly fakes a smile to stop her from worrying. He knows he needs to pull himself together. Chena just assumes he's just being stupid moody, and goes off to do some exercises with Princess Kania. With everyone distracted, our boy decides to sneakily listen in on the conversation between his mother and Phenelia again. This time, his mother is talking about how she can't escape the queen's oppression. She explains that her main goal is to protect Arel while he's still young, and to stop anyone from hurting their family further. Her tone is more serious and determined than it's ever been. Lady Rafana wants to get closer to Miss Phenelia, but it's clear she has more on her mind than just being friendly. Phenelia sees this, but respects Rafana's determination and agrees. They both figure they can rely on each other when things get tough. Meanwhile, Prince Arel is deep in thought, realizing his mother is fully aware of what's really up between the queen and the concubines, which involves both him and her. But he also wonders what her next move would be. While Arel is lost in thought, a girl suddenly shows up near him, and he has no clue how she got there. He silently begs the universe to keep her away, but instead, she crawls into his bed and starts squishing his cheeks, saying she finds him adorable. She treats him like a squishy toy and even starts moving his crib around like it's a game. Our boy wishes that someone, even if it's Truck-kun, would rescue him from this chaos. Then comes a cat, and at first it seems like the cat thinks Arel is cute too. Arel knows there's no escaping now. The nanny says that the princess might visit. Of course, the princess is eager to come over, and Arel realizes he's on his own with no escape in sight. Time flies, and before long Arel is almost 3 years old. Life feels like it's moving way too fast as usual. He can't believe how quickly he's growing up and starts thinking about how much more he has to learn before adulthood. He remembers bits of his previous life and wonders if he'll ever get a chance to relive anything like that. Suddenly, the princess walks into his room. She rushes toward him, but Arel decides to lay a little hide and seek. Unfortunately, she finds him in no time, and he's frustrated and feeling down. But the princess just wants to play hide and seek. Before Arel could refuse, she's already running off to find a bigger spot to play. They end up outside, and it's clear the princess has been visiting a lot since Phenelia came over, with help from the nanny, of course. Arel doesn't mind too much because it seems like these visits are building a strong bond. Even though Arel is still small, Kania believes he's already someone who can be looked after. But she also says that when Arel grows up, it'll be his turn to take care of her instead. The princess makes Arel promise he'll come as soon as possible, but the little prince can't figure out why she's so fixated on him. Before he can think too much about it, Kania says that she adores him. She says playing with him is way more fun than with the others, he's clearly the best choice. Arel laughs, thinking she'll probably regret saying that when she gets older. Kania carries him up immediately, saying it's time to play, and insists on carrying him to their spot. The problem is, Arel feels like he's about to suffocate from her overly enthusiastic help. He silently begs for rescue, and just then, a maid steps in, saying that Arel must be uncomfortable being carried like that. She scolds Kania, saying that even as a princess, she shouldn't carry heavy things yet since she's still a child herself. Arel feels real relief he's finally saved. Although Kania isn't happy at all, she shouts that she wants to play. The maid says she should try drawing or listening to something classical instead, but Kania is sick of all that boring stuff. She says she wants to swing a sword, just like her brother Kyle. Arel notices her practicing with a stick and quickly realizes her balance is way off. The stick's weight is all wrong, and she's not holding it properly. Despite this, Kania is completely into it, imagining she's already defeated some powerful imaginary swordmaster and claiming victory for herself. The maid tries to explain why Kania isn't allowed to practice like Kyle and Lennon. This really upsets the princess, who can't understand why they're allowed but not her. The maid tells her that it isn't proper for a princess to dirty her hands, reminding Kania that she's supposed to be elegant and ladylike. Kania isn't listening, some Mulan vibes. She's already snatched up the maid's sword, and before the maid could stop her, she's talking excitedly about swordsmanship. The maid panics and chases after her, begging her to hand over the sword, or at least just take the sheath instead. Arel stands nearby and he finds himself liking Kania more and more now. As time goes by, Prince Arel turns 5. He's out in the fields of his land, looking all royal and bold, pretending to race on his mighty steed. But let's not get carried away. He's just rocking back and forth on a toy horse, having the time of his life. Chaina, his maid companion / horse trainer, says he should try riding a real horse, but Arel waves it off, saying it's too risky. Chaina tries to hype him up, telling him a prince his age should be into stuff like riding horses and swinging swords. But Arel is like, nah, princes don't have to do all that. This leaves Chaina feeling bummed because he's not exactly oozing ambition. Here's the catch, Arel's no ordinary kid. This is his honor first life. Yep. The guy's been through the ringer more times than he can count. Over all those lifetimes he's figured out one harsh truth. Being too good at anything only brings trouble. Every time he's been a pro at something like sword fighting or magic, it's drawn all the wrong people, either wanting to use him or take him down. So now, he's all about staying low-key and enjoying the perks of being a prince without breaking a sweat. Back at the castle, Arel tells Chaina he needs some alone time, and she agrees, though she's not thrilled about it. Once she's gone, he shuts the door, kicks back, and just lies there doing nothing. Later, they end up in a bit of a pickle. Chaina's frustrated, asking why he hates studying so much, pointing out that a 5-year-old prince should be eager to learn and grow. But Arel's totally not interested, don't care about the world, and definitely not into cramming knowledge. Chaina sighs, half joking that he sounds like someone who's lived 100 lifetimes. Before she can go on, Arel cuts her off and assures her it's not her fault he's like this. Deep down, he decides it's time to just enjoy life for once. YOLO vibes? Not for Arel. It only took him 100 lives to figure out how to kick back and take it easy. Maybe he's just a chill guy, who knows? Chaina reminds Prince Arel that by royal rules, he has to start studying now that he's 5. She pulls out some super basic books, saying they were picked just for him. But Arel, looking all moody, grabs one and shows off his book skills by spinning it around like a toy. Chaina's totally pissed, telling him books are for reading, not spinning. She even tries the guilt trip, saying regular dudes would love to learn but don't get the chance. But Arel doesn't give a care in the world. He starts stacking the books into a mini house instead. Chaina, trying to hold it together, tells him to knock it off and sit back down, but Arel's not listening at all. When words don't work, he goes full drama mode, whining and yelling that he won't study. Suddenly the doors open and his mom walks in, looking like she's had enough. Under her watch, Arel drags himself to the library and starts studying, though not without some complaints. Even while pretending to study, Arel's thinking about how ridiculous this all is. He knows that if his parents really cared about him learning, they'd make sure he was protected. But in his world, being good at anything is just asking for trouble. The more talent a kid like him shows, the more dangerous life gets. For him and everyone around him. Arel doesn't think it's fair, but life is what it is. All he wants is a chill, lazy life where no one's at risk. As he zones out, Chaina snaps him back to reality, telling him to study hard and make people proud. As if that's going to solve anything. Arel thinks about what Chaina says but decides it's a bit much for him. Chaina doesn't let it go though, telling him that if he keeps acting like this, his mom's going to feel sad. That hits a nerve, and Arel finally decides to put in some effort for his mom's sake, not because he suddenly loves studying. Even so, he's firm on one thing: no sword training, no magic lessons. He's had enough of dealing with the chaos that comes with being gifted. Instead, he starts thinking about other, less risky plans for his future. A few days later, a fancy carriage pulls up at the concubine's place. Chaina tells Arel that a mage from the magic tower is here to check his mana. If he's got the talent, they'll start teaching him magic. That's bad news for Arel. He knows any decent mage would sense the crazy amount of mana he's hiding. He figures the only way out is to keep his mana under wraps. As he walks down the hallway to meet this tester, he keeps his head down, trying to look as plain as possible. Chaina tries to cheer him up, saying even if his mana isn't super impressive, he can still work on it. But when they open the door, the tester's face says it all: shocked. Like they just saw something they weren't ready for. The mage stands up quickly and looks right at Prince Arel. As they size each other up, Arel watches the mana flowing through the mage, wondering how he looks in the mage's eyes. The mage grabs Arel's arm to check his vitals and says that something feels off. Chaina, trying to hype him up, asks if Arel is special, but the mage isn't sure whether to call him special or just plain weird since he can't sense any mana in Arel at all. Even after trying to probe with mana, the mage finds nothing, leaving Chaina completely shocked. Arel leans back in his chair, feeling all chill about how well he's hiding his mana like some last-stitch secret weapon. Before walking into the room, he had used his chi to compress his mana and push it to the edges of his body. When the mage looked surprised earlier, Arel knew his plan was working. The idea of someone from a royal bloodline having no mana didn't make any sense, and Arel had totally thrown him off. The mage tells Lady Rifana that Arel has no potential for magic, leaving her confused. He adds that even commoners have a tiny bit of mana, but Arel doesn't seem to have any at all. Some Rockly and Guy vibes. After hearing this, our boy starts to wonder if he went a little too far. Lady Rifana looks crushed, realizing her son might not have what it takes to become a mage. But this is exactly what Arel wants. He's playing the long game, making everyone think he's totally useless with mana. As he sits there pretending to sulk, he knows this is just the start of his act. The next day, Arel meets his new swordsmanship trainer, a young knight named Landfill Tagaron. Arel takes one look at him and silently judges him as boring and weak, not even close to his level. In his past life, Arel had fought monsters and survived brutal battles, so this guy doesn't impress him. Still, Arel decides to play along, agreeing to train and encouraging both of them to grow stronger together, even if he's not expecting much. Arel secretly thinks this whole training thing is more for Landfill's sake than his own. He's definitely not interested in doing anything too hard. Like his sister Kanya, who walks around wearing weights to get stronger. So many Rock Lee references in this. The dude explains that intense training like that is a tradition for the Kinchester family, but Arel says it sounds like something martial artists would do, not royalty. When Arel asks about the plan, the swordsman dude explains that swordsmanship isn't just about strength, it's also about balance and flexibility. To prove his point about flexibility, Landfill flexes on them kids, showing off some fancy sword moves and suggests starting with simple exercises, like balancing on logs. Arel immediately complains about being scared of falling, even though the logs are barely off the ground, but Landfill assures him that even if he does kaplunk, it won't hurt. Arel then asks what he's supposed to do since he's afraid of heights. Next they move on to flexibility training. Landfill assumes Arel would have no problem since he's still a kid, but Arel shocks him by struggling to even touch his toes. The swordsman dude doesn't give up. He decides it's time to practice with wooden swords. He explains how to use centrifugal force to swing properly. Arel gives it a try, but his grip is so bad the sword goes flying. Landfill looks stunned as Arel completely messes up the exercise. Arel, pretending to be crushed, tells Landfill he's hopeless at swordsmanship, but Landfill encourages him, saying it's only his first try and he'll get better with practice. Handing him another sword, they continue the session. The whole time, Arel is very aware of someone watching him. His clumsy performance is all part of his plan to spread rumors about how bad he is, making sure word gets around the city.